He thought I'd get $0. Then the lawyer read one line of her $34 million will. My boy sat there at the will reading with this cocky little grin, sure as the sunrise that I'd walk out with nothing from his mother's $34 million. Then the attorney read a single line, and the air in the room changed. The grin drained off Tyler's face, and he started yelling so loud the walls seemed to vibrate. Before I dive in, do me a favor, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us where you're listening from. It helps more than you'd think. My coffee mug slipped from my hand, smashed on the linoleum, and skittered into a dozen wet, brown-streaked pieces just as Mrs. Whitaker's voice rose through the thin wall like a trumpet. Your blasted sprinklers soaked my begonias again, Mike. I grabbed a dish towel and dropped to my knees, fishing ceramic shards out of the puddle. 65 years old, and I'm still cleaning up messes that aren't entirely on me. I'd put in an automatic sprinkler system last month. One loose joint kept spraying past my fence every third day like clockwork. I tried walking Eleanor Whitaker through my repair plan, but patience wasn't one of her spiritual gifts. The phone started ringing. I let it go, focused on chasing the coffee tide before it reached the baseboards. The machine could earn its keep. But the ringing cut straight through Eleanor's rant about property values and rude tenants. By the fifth ring, I sighed, heaved myself up, and tossed the dripping towel in the sink. Mike Walker speaking. Mr. Walker? This is Janet Parker with Parker, Walsh & Associates in Cheyenne. Her voice had that careful, polished lawyer tone I've learned to recognize, the kind they use right before they drop a cinder block on your day. I'm calling about Samantha Grace Walker. My hand tightened on the receiver. Nobody had said Samantha's full name around me in 15 years. What about her? I'm very sorry to tell you, sir, that Mrs. Walker passed away Tuesday evening. The service is this Friday at 2 o'clock at Riverside Memorial Chapel. The words hit like a hard left. I sat down in the kitchen chair, the old thing giving a tired creak that sounded too loud in the stillness. Tuesday night. 3 days ago. 3 days I'd spent fussing over sprinkler heads and coffee stains. Mr. Walker, are you still there? Yeah, I'm here. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to somebody else. How'd you get my number? Your name was listed among Mrs. Walker's personal effects as an emergency contact. I understand you were previously married? Previously married. 22 years boiled down to a line item. Yes, we divorced in 2010. I see. There will be a reading of the will after the service. You're named as a beneficiary, so it would be best if you attend. Beneficiary. That word didn't sit right in my mouth. Samantha had built her fortune after we split, took the little consulting shop she'd started when we were together and turned it into something I only recognized from business pages and billboards. What on earth would she leave me? Will you be attending, Mr. Walker? Out the window, I could see Eleanor Whitaker glaring down at those drowned begonias, hands on hips, gearing up for round two. But her complaints felt like they belonged to a different universe now, muffled, small. The chapel, I said slowly. Which one again? Riverside Memorial on Grand Avenue. Service at 2, brief reception after. We'll reading at 4:30 downtown at our office. I found myself nodding even though she couldn't see it. I'll be there. After I hung up, I just sat there, staring at the phone like it might ring again and tell me it was all a bad mix-up. The coffee had already started to dry into dark halos that would take elbow grease. I didn't move. Couldn't. The simple fact that Samantha, bright, stubborn, unstoppable Samantha, was gone wouldn't fit inside my head. Afternoon sun slid through the window, turning dust motes into slow dancing specks, the same way old memories float up when you don't want them to. Her full name kept echoing in my skull, Samantha Grace Walker, until I wasn't in my kitchen anymore. I was back in Murphy's Diner, snow coming down outside on a February night in 1987, watching a woman in a red wool coat pin a manager to the wall with nothing but logic and fire. So you're saying you won't even look at women for weekend manager because we can't handle the heat? Her voice carried across the empty booths, clear as a bell, uncompromising. That's about the dumbest business practice I've heard this week. I froze mid-bite over a slice of apple pie. She turned just enough for me to catch her profile, sharp cheekbones, a set jaw, dark hair that caught the light like it had a mind of its own. She was furious and magnificent, and I half hoped the manager would keep digging so I could listen to her tear him apart. Ma'am, I didn't mean offense. Of course you didn't mean offense. You meant to discriminate. She slid a card across the counter. When you're ready to hire by qualifications instead of bad ideas, give me a call. The little bell over the door jingled, and the diner went flat, like someone unplugged it. I watched her climb into a blue Honda, noticed how she checked her mirrors twice before pulling into traffic, careful, methodical, and absolutely unafraid of a fight worth having. That one's nothing but trouble, the manager muttered. I stood, tucked a 5 beside my half-eaten pie, and surprised myself with how sure I felt. No, I said. That one's the real deal. Her card lay on the counter. Samantha Bennett, business consultant. I memorized the number and stepped into the cold. Took me 3 days to find the courage. When I finally dialed, she picked up on the second ring. Samantha Bennett. This is Mike Walker. We haven't met, but I saw you at Murphy's Friday night. A beat. The guy with the pie who told the manager I was the real deal? You heard that. I fumbled my gloves out of the truck. You also tipped like you meant it. I could hear her smile. So, Mike Walker, what can I do for you? Have dinner with me, someplace better than Murphy's. Another pause, longer this time. Is this a date request or a consulting inquiry? Definitely a date. Though if you've got professional advice on convincing smart, beautiful women to say yes to dinner with strangers, I'd take that too. She laughed, an honest laugh, not one of those polite little noises people make to be nice. Saturday, Romano's on 3rd. 7 o'clock. She wore that same red coat, and under it a black dress that made my pulse do dumb things. We talked for 3 hours about everything except work, her California childhood, my job at the power plant, our shared love for old movies and newer books. When she laughed at the story about me flooding the apartment trying to fix a leaky faucet, I knew I was a goner. 6 months later, I slid a ring across that very same diner counter. Marry me, Samantha Bennett. Make me the luckiest man in Wyoming. She said yes before I finished the sentence. We got married under big September skies. Perfect weather, the kind that makes you believe your promises on the spot. She wore her grandmother's dress, taken in by a seamstress with gold hands, and carried wildflowers we cut that morning. My fingers shook putting the ring on. Forever, she whispered, and I believed her right down to my boots. Tyler showed up 2 years later, a red-faced screamer who turned our quiet house into a place with a heartbeat. I stood there in the hospital watching Sam cradle our son with the same fierce focus she brought to everything, like she'd bend the world if it didn't cooperate. And I thought, this is it, this is enough for me. Even then, I noticed how her eyes kept drifting to a business magazine on the nightstand. Time moved like it does, one breakfast at a time. By the time Tyler hit 7, Sam bought him a computer, not a toy, a real machine worth more than my monthly pay. He needs to speak tech, she said, watching him click through programs I couldn't pronounce. The future belongs to kids who think digital. I suggested teaching him how to cast a fly. She laughed, not the kind laugh. We'd already moved to Hillcrest Avenue by then. 3 bathrooms, a kitchen island bigger than our whole first place. Sam's firm had landed a big mining consortium contract, and suddenly we had gadgets and services I'd never dreamed of. A housekeeper came twice a week. Our fridge spat out ice. Tyler's room looked like a catalog. Isn't this wonderful? Sam said one evening, waving a hand at the crystal chandelier and the 12-seat table. We can finally entertain right. I missed our old beat-up kitchen table, the one scarred by Tyler's crayons and 100 late-night talks. The new table reflected fingerprints like a tattletale. The entertaining started right away. Business folks, potential clients, couples who spoke fluent market share over salad. I wore my best shirt and tried to keep up, but talk of hedge funds and restructuring made me feel like I'd landed in the wrong class without the textbook. Mike works at the power plant, Sam would say if someone asked, and there was an edge to it. Less pride, more apology. Tyler swam in that world like a fish born to the water. At 10, he could chatter about coding with Sam's tech friends. At 12, he complained about wine lists at places I couldn't afford. At 14, he rolled his eyes at camping, preferring conferences in Denver or Salt Lake. Dad doesn't get it, became his favorite line, delivered with that teenage sigh that suggests the rest of us are amateurs. Our first real blow-up came on his 15th birthday. Sam planned a party that looked like a trade show. Caterers, hired performers, guest list full of client families. I wanted a backyard barbecue with his school buddies. This is ridiculous, I told her the night before, watching floral arrangements land like centerpieces at a gala. He's 15, not 50. He's growing up somewhere different than we did, she said, tweaking a vase by a quarter inch. These connections matter. Relationships shape the future. What about just being a kid? She turned fully, and for a second her eyes went cold, calculated where warmth used to live. Being just a kid is a luxury we can't give him. The world's competitive. Either we train him to win, or we set him up to lose. I thought about my own 15th, fishing with my dad, a lopsided cake, gifts wrapped in the Sunday comics. Perfect, because it was simple. By her scoreboard, the party was a home run. Tyler charmed the adults, networked with the kids, and unwrapped gifts that would make a banker blink. Laptops, designer clothes, a bike that cost more than some used cars. But I caught him by the pool once, standing alone, looking smaller than the party. "You okay, bud?" He straightened fast, slid his mask back on. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? For half a heartbeat, I saw the little boy under all that polish, and it cracked something inside me. That party was the first rock in a long landslide. 10 years of slow motion. For every family dinner we lost to a conference call, every vacation swapped for a client crisis, every school game that got steamrolled by a board meeting. "You don't get the pressure," she'd say when I complained. "This business funds our life. Someone has to make the hard calls." I know pressure, the kind that keeps a grid humming so strangers can flip a switch and not think twice. The difference is I was serving something bigger than me. By the time Tyler finished high school, I barely knew my own kid. Sam had shaped him into her ideal protege, sharp, ambitious, and allergic to anything that didn't boost his trajectory. I suggested he tour a trade school along with the colleges, and he looked at me like I asked him to time travel back to the Middle Ages. "Dad, that's the mindset that keeps you stuck," he said, 17 years old and already talking like a consultant. "You settled for average." "I'm not doing that." Average. Like 25 years of keeping the lights on meant nothing. Like showing up as a steady dad was something to be ashamed of. College made the gap wider. He picked business school, Sam's alma mater, of course, and came home on breaks with theories about optimization and personal branding. He looked at our life like it was a museum exhibit. "You could do more, Dad. Mom started with nothing and built an empire. You've held the same job forever." "Some things matter more than money," I'd say. He'd already moved on. The final explosion came senior year. Sam was putting in 100-hour weeks on a massive acquisition. I was handling the boring normal, groceries, laundry, the stuff that keeps a life from falling apart. When she missed Tyler's graduation for a client emergency, I finally said what had been chewing on me for years. "Enough, Sam. Family has to win sometimes." She stood in that sparkling kitchen at midnight, suit still sharp, phone in hand. "Don't lecture me. Everything we have, everything Tyler's achieved, exists because of my work." "What about what we lost?" "Like what?" "Like us. Like being a family instead of a corporation." She looked at me for a long time, and I saw the answer in her eyes before she spoke. We weren't a family anymore. We were a business arrangement past its expiration date. "Maybe we stop pretending this works," she said quietly. The divorce took 6 months. Her attorneys were quick, polite, and deadly. I got the little house on Maple Street, our old starter place she'd kept as a rental, and enough cash to live modest. She got everything else, including Tyler's loyalty, no questions asked. "You hold people back," he told me right before he moved to Denver to work for her. "All this guilt about simple living, it's toxic. I can't be around it." I sat in the empty house afterward, surrounded by boxes from a life that apparently didn't mean much to the two people I loved most. 15 years later, afternoon light faded across my apartment floor. My coffee went cold next to scattered ceramic. Somewhere across town, people were ironing black suits for the woman who once promised me forever, and I had no idea why she'd remembered my name in her will. Those 3 days between Janet Parker's call and the funeral crawled by. I cleaned the apartment twice, pressed my one decent suit, and rehearsed conversations that were never going to happen. Every morning I thought about staying home, and every evening I decided I owed her the courtesy of showing up. Friday came gray and cold, typical May in Wyoming. I stood in front of the mirror, wrestling a tie I hadn't worn in 5 years, wondering what Sam would think of the man staring back. More silver than brown up top, lines mapping out disappointments I didn't talk about. Riverside Memorial was 20 minutes away, past neighborhoods that told the whole story of Rock Springs in a half-hour drive. Starter apartments, tidy subdivisions, and finally those manicured lawns where Sam's circle lived. The chapel sat on a hill with Gothic angles that looked permanent. The roundabout was packed with Mercedes, BMWs, a sprinkling of Teslas that cost more than I ever made in a good year. I parked my 15-year-old Honda between a Lexus and a Cadillac and felt like I'd shown up to the wrong party. Inside whispered money, mahogany pews, stained glass, flower arrangements worth a paycheck. 200 people, easy. The hum in the room had a little grief in it and a lot of networking. I recognized a handful of faces from old dinners, but most belonged to the life she'd built after me. I slid into a back pew, hoping to vanish. No such luck. Whispers rippled like a stone dropped in a pond. A woman in a sleek black suit nudged her friend and gestured my way. I caught pieces, her ex. Can you believe he, after what he did? In their version, I'm the anchor that dragged a genius woman under, the villain that made their story tidy. I learned a long time ago not to argue with narratives that make other people feel better. Dad, the word cracked across the room like a bat on a ball. Tyler came down the aisle hard, his face carved up by disbelief and anger. 37 now, wearing success like armor, sharp features from his mother, a suit that probably cost my rent for several months, the whole confident posture of a man who never once doubted he belonged. What are you doing here? Heads turned. Conversations died. I came to pay my respects, I said, standing slow. You lost that right 15 years ago. He stepped close enough for his cologne to announce itself. Expensive and aggressive. She wouldn't have wanted you here. Maybe not. I needed to be. For what? To fix your conscience? To play grieving widower for people who know what kind of husband you were? The chapel went quiet, 200 sets of eyes waiting for blood. I felt that old weight settle on my shoulders like it used to in the bad years. But this time, there wasn't anything left to lose. I'm not here to stir the pot, Tyler. I'll sit in the back. I won't bother anyone. When it's over, I'll go. You'll go now. His voice climbed, and a few folks nodded along. I held his stare. Someone coughed. A phone buzzed on a wooden pew. Before I could answer, he turned to the room with a performer's ease. Sorry for the disruption on a day meant for remembrance, he said, flicking a hand toward me like I was a fly. My father seems to think divorce doesn't end a family. A rustle of agreement. Heat rose in my face, but I kept my voice even. For those who don't know, Tyler went on, warming to it. This is Mike Walker, the man who spent 22 years keeping one of the sharpest women in this town under his thumb. While my mom built an organization that put food on hundreds of tables, he punched a clock and griped about her ambition. Tyler, that's enough, I said, harder than I meant to. Is it? Or do people deserve the truth about why he's here? He pivoted back to the crowd. He took half in the divorce despite adding nothing to her success. Then he spent 15 years pretending to be a victim while she accomplished greatness. Heads nodded. People I used to call neighbors stared at the hymnals. She supported him while he refused to grow. Now he shows up acting like he mattered. He finished strong. My mother died building something that'll outlive all of us. She deserved a partner who'd help her climb, not someone trying to pull her down. Silence sat heavy. Part of me wanted to walk out and spare myself, but another part, the one that loved Samantha Bennett across 4 decades, kept my feet planted. You done? I asked quietly. He blinked, surprised I hadn't folded. I loved your mother for 40 years, I said, letting the words carry. 22 as her husband, 18 as someone who wished her well even when we couldn't make it work. I'm not here for recognition. I'm here to honor promises we once met. I sat. The room breathed again, awkward and careful. The funeral director stepped forward, announced the service starting soon. Tyler shot me one last look and moved to the front row. I stayed for the whole thing. Eulogies that painted Sam as a visionary, readings about her leadership, songs about triumph. When it ended, folks lined up to console Tyler and pretended not to see me. I waited until the place thinned out and reached for my jacket. Mr. Walker? A well-dressed man with a lawyer's briefcase approached. Dan Miller, Parker, Walsh and Associates. Could I have a moment? As the last notes faded and the director closed things down, the weight of the morning settled on me like a heavy coat. I figured I'd slip out a side door, drive home to my quiet place, and try real hard not to think. Dan Miller shook my hand. Firm grip, clear eyes behind wire rims, 50s maybe. The kind of polished confidence you get from a career managing rich people's storms. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said. We spoke briefly. "Thank you," I said. "It was a good service." Sam would have liked the details. She planned them carefully. He glanced around. "I'd like to meet with you and Tyler. There are estate matters to handle." "Both of us." Tyler appeared like he'd been summoned, grief shifting into attention. "Is that necessary?" He flicked a thumb at me. "He's not exactly. Your father is named in the will, Tyler," Dan said evenly. "His presence is required." Named? That didn't sound right. Maybe I'd be there so they could officially say I didn't get a dime. "I don't think that's necessary," I murmured. "I'm sure it's just a formality." "I'm afraid not, Mr. Walker." Mrs. Walker was very specific. "Both of you." Tyler looked annoyed but confident, the way a man looks when the game is rigged in his favor. "Fine. Let's do it. Try not to complicate this," he told me. We walked 3 blocks through downtown, old brick buildings that had seen this town rise and sink with the energy markets. Dan kept the chatter neutral, the weather, the turnout, revealing nothing. His office took the top floor of a restored Victorian. Dark wood, leather chairs, diplomas, photos with local bigwigs, the whole package. Exactly the kind of place Sam would have chosen, successful without being loud. "Please sit," Dan said, gesturing at 2 leather chairs in front of a mahogany desk. Tyler took the spot dead center, leaving me the chair a little off to the side, which felt about right. Dan opened a thick folder and set a few papers on the desk. Afternoon light slanted in and caught dust moving slow in the quiet. "Before we start," he said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to say I'm sorry again. Sam wasn't just a client. She was a friend." Tyler dipped his chin. I just nodded. Dan lifted a document backed in blue. "This is the last will and testament of Samantha Grace Walker, executed March 15th, 2024, properly witnessed per Wyoming law. It replaces all prior wills." 14 months ago. I wondered what made her rewrite it then. A scare? A change of heart? The will affirms Mrs. Walker was of sound mind and not under undue influence. His voice took on that formal rhythm. Tyler leaned forward, ready to catch what he figured was his due. "To my beloved son, Tyler James Walker," Dan read. "I leave the family home at 847 Hillcrest Avenue, with all furnishings, artwork, and personal property inside." A satisfied smile tugged at Tyler's mouth. "That place is worth $750,000 easy. Additionally," Dan went on, "I bequeath to Tyler the sum of $500,000 to be transferred from my primary investment account within 60 days of probate. $500,000 plus the house." Tyler's smile tightened. He was pleased, but you could see him doing math. The business was the real prize. "That's good," he said, masking the wobble. "And what about the company?" "I'm still on specific bequests," Dan said, calm as a pond. "Please let me finish. 500 grand is more money than I'll ever see in one place. With the house, it was a strong inheritance, right and fair, I figured. He was her son, her chosen successor. The bequest to Tyler," Dan continued, "has conditions. His inheritance is contingent on continued employment with Bennett Consulting Group for a minimum of 2 years from the date of execution of this will, or until such time as the company is sold or dissolved." Tyler's eyebrows knit. "Conditions? And what do you mean, until it's sold? Who would sell it? Mom would never." "I'm reading the terms as written," Dan said gently. "These are your mother's words." A tension crept in that I hadn't noticed before. Tyler's hands opened and closed. I leaned forward in spite of myself. "Let me get this straight," he said, voice sharpening. "I get the house and 500,000, with strings, and you're talking like the company might be sold? That's nonsense. Mom would never sell her life's work." Dan took off his glasses, polished them slowly, and put them back on. He looked from Tyler to me. "Your mother's will contains additional provisions that handle the rest of her assets," he said. "The company, investments, and other holdings." "Well then, read them." Tyler snapped. "Let's hear the rest." Dan nodded, lifted the next page, and cleared his throat. "To my former husband, Michael Allen Walker," he read, and the room went still. "I bequeath the sum of $33.5 million to be transferred from my primary investment accounts and securities portfolio." The number sat between us like a grenade that just landed but hadn't gone off yet. My mouth fell open without my permission. $33.5 million. It didn't seem like a number that belonged to my life. There has to be a mistake, I heard myself say from a long way off. Did you say 33 million? 33.5, Dan said. His face stayed professional, but his eyes watched us like a lifeguard. Tyler went pale, then red, then pale again. What did you just say? Additionally, Dan pressed on, I transferred to Mike Walker controlling interest in Bennett Consulting Group, including all subsidiaries, real estate, and business assets. This transfer includes 65% ownership of all corporate entities and appointment as chairman of the board. The floor tilted. I couldn't pull air. Controlling interest in the company that ate our marriage, the empire I watched her build? She was giving that to me. This can't be right, I whispered. There's an error. No error, Dan said, polishing his glasses again. She oversaw every word. Tyler shot to his feet, so fast his chair bumped the wall. Impossible. She couldn't. He stared at me like I'd crawled out of the floor. What did you do? How did you trick her? I didn't do anything, I said, because what else is there to say? I haven't talked to your mother in 15 years. Bull. The word cracked out of him. People don't just hand 33 million to their ex for no reason. You got to her when she was sick. You took advantage. Mrs. Walker was of sound mind, Dan said, voice firm. She completed a mental competency evaluation specifically to prevent this kind of challenge. I sat there like a statue. Those numbers belonged in somebody else's story. But why? I asked, and my voice broke. Why would she do this? Your wife, he caught himself. Your ex-wife left a message to be read after these provisions, Dan said. Her instructions were very clear. Tyler's face twisted, rage and hurt fighting it out. A message? She left him a message and cut me out of what matters? You received a substantial inheritance, Dan said gently. $500,000 and a valuable home is more than most people see in a lifetime. Compared to what he's getting? Tyler pointed at me with a shaking hand. We're talking hundreds of millions in total value. The company dwarfs the rest. The air buzzed with anger. Somewhere inside, a quieter truth took shape. My life had just changed in a way I didn't have a shelf for. Tyler blew. This is fraud, he screamed, slamming his palm on the desk hard enough to scatter papers. He manipulated her. He coerced her. I swear to you, I said, finding a dry scrap of strength. I didn't even know she was sick. She wasn't, Dan said. She was unusually clear. Then why? Tyler's voice cracked like he was 17 again. Why would she do this to me? I did everything she wanted. I worked in the company. I lived the plan. Dan raised a hand. She explains it. Do you want me to read the message? Tyler shook. Rage and grief braided together. She couldn't tell me to my face, but she wrote him a letter? The message is for both of you, Dan said. He reached for a thick envelope marked personal, the handwriting so familiar my chest hurt. He opened it and began. My dearest Mike, if you're hearing this, I'm gone, and you're probably planted in Dan's office wondering if the planet tilted. I can see your face, the same look you got when I moved the couch without warning. Confused but trying to be kind. In spite of everything, I smiled. She always could sketch me with a sentence. I know this blindsides you, Dan continued in her words. You're likely thinking it's a mistake, that you don't deserve the money or the weight that comes with it. You're wrong. You do. Here's why. I never stopped loving you. Not during our worst fights. Not through the divorce. Not in 15 stubborn years of silence. I got mad because you didn't understand how big I wanted to build. I got even madder at myself for choosing that size over our marriage. You tried to save us, Mike. You begged me to balance the ledger. I was too proud and too scared to listen. The tears came up out of nowhere. Hot. Unstoppable. Tyler, Dan read, and my son's head jerked up. My brilliant, beautiful boy. You're furious at me right now, probably certain your dad manipulated me. Sweetheart, you're not ready for this kind of inheritance. Not yet. You've lived in the glow of my success, enjoyed the benefits without shouldering the burden. You've never had to build from zero, never had to choose people over profit when it cost you. Most of all, you've spent 15 years hating a good man for sins he didn't commit. That's not true, Tyler whispered, but the conviction was gone. Mike taught me about character, Dan kept reading. Quiet strength. Integrity that doesn't need to win every room. I forgot those lessons when I started measuring my worth by headcount and revenue, but I never forgot the man who taught them. Tyler, I've given you enough to live comfortably and do some real thinking about who you are when the scoreboard isn't flashing. Learn to build something by yourself. Learn to choose people. Learn to forgive your father for being human and imperfect. Mike, I'm leaving you more than money. I'm handing you the chance I should have taken, to use wealth like a tool for good instead of a trophy for superiority. I trust you because you never wanted this, and because you won't use it to hurt anyone. It went on, practical notes and hopes for both of us. But the heart of it was plain as day. She chose character over entitlement. When Dan folded the pages, the room went softer and very still. I held the letter like it was the last warm thing in winter. She'd loved me. She'd seen me. That was the gift under all the zeros. Tyler spoke first, voice small and mean at the same time. This isn't over. I can contest. Mental capacity. Undue influence. Fraud. I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man who expected the world to obey. You can try, I said gently. But your mother was right. You're not ready. And you are. He laughed all hollow. You're a retired plant worker with no business chops. You don't know the first thing about running a 9-figure company. The old version of me wanted to agree, but her words were still ringing. You deserve every penny. Maybe I don't know M&A, I said, standing. But I know something your mom ended up valuing more. What's that? The difference between serving myself and serving other people. This is insane, he snapped. She was old. She wasn't thinking straight. Your mother was 62 and in excellent mental health when she signed, Dan said, done indulging him. She did a full evaluation to head off exactly this. Then why? He broke again. Why do this to me? Compassion surprised me. She didn't do it to you, son. She did it for you. She gave you space to find out who you are when money isn't the whole story. I don't want that space, he exploded. I want what's mine. What's yours, I said softly, is $500,000 and a house near $1 million. That's a lot. What you think you were owed was never guaranteed. He stared at me a long time, and I watched something shift. The guy who humiliated me at the chapel wasn't in charge anymore. The door clicked behind him when he left. Dan tidied his stack of papers, pulling us back to earth. There's a mountain of logistics, transfers, board meetings. The current management team is strong. They'll help you transition. I nodded, still catching up to my own life. Can I ask you something, Dan? Of course. Did she really love me after everything? He smiled, first honest one I'd seen all day. She brought you up every time we met. Not the divorce, not the fights. The man, the values. She believed success without character is just fancy failure. I walked out into a different afternoon than the one I'd walked in from. Sun felt warmer. Air came easier. I had work to do, responsibilities to shoulder, a company to learn, people to honor. For the first time in 15 years, I felt equal to the task. Turns out justice isn't about revenge or public victory laps. It's about seeing clearly, about how character outlasts credentials, how patience beats entitlement over the long haul, and how love, the real kind, doesn't die. Samantha saw all that, and in the last big move of her life, she handed me the chance to prove her right. If this story hit you, tap like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me what part got you in the comments. Want the next one? Click the box on the left. Thanks for listening.